Greetings, book lovers everywhere. I'm E-Train and welcome to E-Train Talks, where I discuss everything books in the hopes of inspiring others to love reading as much as I do. Today is a very special podcast because today I'm joined by not one, but two talented and accomplished authors all the way from Canada via Zoom. I'm so honored to welcome Paul Coccia and Eric Walters. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. I'm a little bit in awe at this point. Your introduction was better than Paul and I are going to speak. Very impressive.
I think so too, Eric. I'm in agreement with you.
Thank you. And Eric and Paul have a brand new book out, which came out this year, which they co-authored together, entitled On the Line, a heartwarming, entertaining, and fun read that shares a powerful message of acceptance. It's a novel that I inhaled because it has everything that I look for in a really good middle grade story: friendship, acceptance, family, and a bonus, basketball. This was such an amazing read and on top of all the wonderful topics, On the Line touched on some LGBTQ plus themes as well, which is why I thought it would be the perfect time to feature Paul and Eric and their new novel on my podcast because it's Pride Month. So on that note, let's get to my question so we can find out more about Eric and Paul's writing journey as co-authors of On the Line. So my first question is, this is my first podcast where I've had the chance to interview co-authors of a novel at the same time. How long have you known each other before collaborating on the Line? And can you share how the novel came to be?
We sort of know of each other for a long, long time because my mother-in-law and Paul's mother were very good friends.
Wow.
So we go back that way a whole lot of time, and we discovered this long-standing connection we had.
And I had some of her recipes, Eric. That was one of the first things I offered to you because I didn't know if your family had retained them. And I was glad to hear they did because they're great recipes. They always work.
With a collaboration, you've got to have people that have strengths and strengths that go together. So, for example, Paul is really good at baking, and I'm really good at eating. So it's a natural collaboration.
And you're great at basketball, and I'm not great at basketball. So it really works well, Eric.
That would be one of the things you'd see in the book is that while Paul and I wrote and overwrote and coordinated and everything, if there's a basketball scene, you can be pretty sure I wrote it first and Paul went over it. If there's a baking scene, you can be pretty sure that he wrote it first and I went over it.
You're like, that sounds delicious. And I was like, that sounds really exciting for a game. So, I didn't give you much input there, Eric.
Well, I think that having strengths and weaknesses that go together is such a great aspect of a novel. And I think that you both brilliantly described the baking scenes and the basketball scenes because they're both your strengths. And honestly, after reading the baking scenes, I was so hungry to eat. And then after reading the basketball scenes, I wanted to go outside and play basketball for 30 minutes like Jordan Riker.
Very nice.
And I'm just so glad that you collaborated on the Line. And I really hope that you collaborate on more books in the future because I know that from all the people that I've recommended On the Line to, after they've read it, they've really loved the story of Jordan Riker and friends.
Very nice.
And will you share what the co-authoring experience is like? For instance, did you have writing sessions together, or did you each write separately and share what you've written with each other and kind of bounce off of each other ideas?
Well, let's be honest. It was awful. It was terrible. I'm going to talk to Paul. People always ask us, was it a difficult process? And I just think it was so easy, so seamless.
Yeah, we worked together quite well. The pandemic came in just as we started writing. So Eric and I actually have never written together in the same space. I keep joking, Eric, that the book's called On the Line because it's about how much time you spent on the phone together.
That's a lot of time. What we do is we talk about an overall plan of the book. They talk about writers being plotters or pantsers. I'm naturally a planner. Paul is a planner, not to the same extent, but when you're working together, you have to be planners. You have to figure out what is the basic premise of the book, what chapters are going to follow. And then you go from there. And often things go in very different directions, but you have a plan to start with. And that's where we started.
And we kind of took things organically. There were certain chapters that felt like Eric chapters and certain chapters that felt like my chapters. And Eric, from the very beginning, there was no ego between the two of us. It was go in and touch everything I wrote and change whatever you want.
Yeah, you can't see your words as being sacred. Writing is Paul says, an organic process. You're evolving the story. So, for example, let's say for the sake of argument, I can't remember. Let's say I wrote chapter 1 and 2. Paul would then go over my 1 and 2, make edits, do chapter 3 and 4. He'd send it back to me. I'd reread 1 and 2 that he changed, 3 and 4 that he'd done, make the changes. I might write 5. It would go back to him. He'd look at 1, 2, 3, 4, redo 5, and just bounce back and forth.
It's a really interesting process. And I think it's great that you both kind of made the process seamless. And you can really tell that there's a great transition from Eric chapters to Paul chapters and back again. Mm-hmm. And I think that just On the Line in general, it's a real great mix of your strengths, like I said. And also, I do think that that's a very good play on words, on the line, and you're both on the phone all the time. And I don't know if you live close to each other, but would you have wanted to work on the Line in person?
When we revised, Eric, it would have been good when we were reading out loud.
It would have been nice to have more of that time, because when I've co-written with people, we've done that. One of the last edits of a story is a read aloud, where you actually read the story out loud. And to be on the phone that's like 12 or 14 hours to read the story out loud is a lot of time to be on the phone, as opposed to, or even on Zoom sessions, as opposed to being sitting in a room together.
Yeah, and hopefully oh, sorry.
Oh, no, I didn't mean to interrupt. I lost my voice the first read through, and Eric, you lost your voice the second read through. So for a few days right after, neither of us were speaking to each other.
It's also nice when you're reading a story, and I always insist, I've just done an oral read on another story, because you get things with your ears that you don't get with your eyes. We were reading along, and I'd be reading a line and think, oh, I really like that line. Okay, who wrote that line? Well, this was your chapter mainly, wasn't it? And we try and figure it out, and at times, again, I'm guaranteed I wrote basketball and he wrote baking, but beyond that, it's hard to tell which parts came from which author originally.
Yeah, it's a really interesting process. And I had no idea that you had, one of the parts of revising a novel was doing a read aloud. And I'm glad that you hopefully weren't using telephones, because that telephone bill would have been really, really bad. And I think that maybe you were giving each other this, maybe one of you thought that you were giving each other the silent treatment after the whole read alouds. It's a really interesting that there's so much that goes into a novel, and then you have to, when it's co-authored, while you say the operation is kind of seamless, it also is still really difficult. While you work great together as a team, you have to be on the phone 12 to 14 hours with each other. That must not have been very fun. It was fun, but also hard on the voice.
I think it was also got to the point after the story was finished, I missed not having 5 phone calls a day with Paul, because it would really be, I'd call him or he'd call me and say, I was thinking about chapter 7, and when the character says this, what do you think if they went this way? And we'd bounce things back and forth continually. It was a real process, but it was a joy.
And the 12 to 14 hours were partly because I would stop and go, Eric, can you explain to me what the difference between one-on-one and pickup is? And how many players are actually on a team, not on the court at any given time, but make up a team. So a lot of that was me stopping you the first read through and getting those questions answered.
Well, Paul, did you watch the finals last night?
Of like RuPaul's Drag Race? Yeah, I watched it.
I was screwing up the TV. I thought the refs were trying to get Boston back in the game when they shouldn't have.
Yeah.
Golden State, 4th championship, 8 years.
Yeah, I'm wearing my Golden State Warriors bow tie because I'm a huge fan of them, and I was so glad they won the championship.
I coached against Steph Curry.
Really?
Yeah, I was involved with 2 Ontario championship teams. The third time we finished second because Steph dropped 36 points on us in the finals. That kid could play ball when he was 11, 12, 13, and 14, believe me.
Wow.
Also one of the most polite young men you'll ever come across. Polite, love of literature, great student, really good kid who's become a very fine young man. He
has, both on the court and off the court as well.
Yeah, you got to feel proud of them. You got to feel proud of what they did. And Steve Kerr as a coach and as a human being, you don't get much better than him.
Yeah, 4 titles as a coach and 5 as a player. That's a very Like I know that Paul, doesn't follow basketball much, might kind of.
Nine championships. Like who has?
I understand
he's
it's
out
an
of fingers.
accomplishment. I'm not.
He's out of fingers. He's now wearing one of those rings on his thumb.
That must be hard to fit on your thumb.
Well, especially because you see how big those rings are. They're like bowling balls, some of them.
Yeah. So that leads me to my next question. So did someone have the idea for On the Line before you both joined writing forces, or did you decide to write On the Line together and kind of came up with the storyline like through calls and plotting?
Eric, you had the idea for Jordan first.
A kernel of the idea. I had a basic sort of idea, and then Paul and I worked it out from there.
Yeah, so you had an idea for a 13-year-old basketball player. And the premise was that you told me on the phone, the very first conversation, he just wants his parents to stop fighting, and they do because his dad leaves and comes out. And that was kind of where it started. And then we started talking.
Yeah, I had 2 lines, and then it became a novel through the collaborative process.
Wow. It really is a collaborative process. And I think that you both added really great aspects to On the Line. It has to start somewhere, and then you slowly progressed into like 200, 300 pages of pure amazingness.
And it's funny how some of the things you didn't see coming. I certainly didn't see his best friend as being who he was. That was Paul's creation. Paul had much more to do with who his best friend was. And then I like characters who are smart alecks. So to be able to take his best friend and make him into a smart aleck just was enjoyable for me. Like Jordan is the straight man in that duo.
Yeah.
In a comic, I'm the straight man. Straight as in he's the one that feeds the lines to his friend who's the comic.
Both, Eric. You got it right on both counts.
Every comedic duo has a straight man and a funny man, and he was the straight man.
I think that Jordan's friend is probably one of my favorite characters. I also really love reading smart alecks because occasionally I try to be a smart aleck, maybe too much.
So you'd fit into that. We were talking before about me going to kids in my class and saying to them, I want to write this character, I want to name after. He's a great guy, does well in school, loves sports, occasionally gets in trouble because he doesn't know when to shut up. And we talked about that. Those are all fine qualities. It's important to know sometimes that you shouldn't shut up, that you need to speak your mind, you need to be honest, you need to say what's going on.
Yeah, and I think that Junior, Jordan's best friend, he really did that. Like, it may have been hard for him, but eventually after all of the events that, oh wait, no, that's kind of spoiling it.
Not that
Spoiler
much.
alert, go ahead.
Spoiler alert, everybody. I'll probably do like a disclaimer at the start of the podcast. So I think that it took a lot of courage, but Junior really stood up for himself, and if Junior didn't share who he was with Jordan, I think that the story could have had a totally different turn and a totally different ending. So I really like that addition to On the Line.
Now, that wasn't a spoiler alert, that was an intrigue alert.
Yeah, intrigue alert, yeah.
Yes, that's all that was.
Mm-hmm. So nothing important in this conversation here that will have major impact on the story.
Yeah, everyone, look away. Look away.
Well, they can just turn down the volume for 30 seconds, Eric, right? Just twist the knob.
So why did you decide to incorporate sports as a safe space for protagonist Jordan Riker throughout On the Line?
It's funny. I've got a lot of books that have sports in them, but I've never written a sports book. This isn't a basketball book, although there's basketball intertwined in it. It's part of the vehicle for telling the story.
And it created that masculine world that needed to exist to speak about relationships between males. You need those spaces in order to discuss those things. Mm-hmm. And we had Chris Voth, Eric, who blurbed the book for us. Chris Voth is I'm going to try and get it right, Chris. I hope he's listening, because if I do get it right, I want credit. Chris is the first openly out Canadian national team sports pro player for volleyball, which he now coaches in Switzerland. And he read the book and he said he found that sports for him as a queer young man who was dealing with what was going on with him, that he didn't feel there was a space. That was a space where he could be who he was to some degree. He was on the court and he was a volleyball player, and that's his identity, and he didn't have to struggle there, although the struggles were happening internally.
So my next question is, were there any experiences when you were writing On the Line that were similar to either of your lives? And if so, what made you decide to include these aspects?
Eric, we both know adult men who have come out, which that was something we spoke about in the first conversation, is family, friends, people we know. It's a story that is not uncommon. And I think I had the work of mining. I didn't come out, so that was kind of interesting. And I told Eric, he goes, okay, if there's something about coming out, you'll kind of be the authority naturally. And I said, no, I didn't have that experience. But I did have to go into those emotions around, what if someone who's supposed to love you just decides they're going to stop and takes that away? So I went digging into those, which was sometimes hard.
Mm-hmm. We also, I think we as a society have come a long way, although we've backslid in the past few years, but there still is a bravery to coming out, to acknowledging who you are, and to your family, to the community in general. And we want to get that part out. This isn't history. This is present day reality for a bunch of people, and the emotional responses and the way their families react and the way their communities react.
That is so meaningful, and I'm so glad you included that in On the Line. And I think that that's just really inspiring, your words, and that kind of leads to my next question. So some of the themes expressed in On the Line are friendship, acceptance, and family. Are these themes that you often try to incorporate in your other novels?
Acceptance is a big part of whatever I write about. A sense of hope is something I write about. I like to leave with a sense of hope. Mm-hmm. A word that I hate with a passion is tolerate and tolerance. I tolerate being a Toronto Maple Leaf fan. You accept people. You go beyond that. And I think those are messages of most books I write, but this is a pretty powerful message in this book.
And Eric, I've read a few of your books. I think the idea of friendship and what family looks like takes shape. When you're writing queer books, one of the interesting things is always the chosen family. And I think that's kind of where friendship and family can intersect in really interesting ways.
Mm-hmm. I just finished a book, writing a book called The Club, about a young girl who finds out that her father, she's a sperm donor, conceived by a sperm donor, and finds out she actually has 9 brothers and sisters that she didn't know she had. And that whole definition of what is your family? Who are your relatives? Is it the people you live with? Is it the people you're genetically connected to? Or what combination of those things? Those are important concepts to understand.
Yeah, and I think those are concepts that are really relevant and on the line in a lot of queer stories that I read. Because, like, your family, we come to learn that the main characters come to learn that family isn't just people who you're related to through blood. Family is also the people who care about you and you care about, and vice versa.
Well, you think my wife and I are not related by blood, but she is my family.
Yeah.
You choose your family members as much as you're biologically connected to them. It's funny. We always think of this sort of Leave It to Beaver, mother, father, 3 kids as being family. But historically, family was often stepkids and stepmothers and extra kids and grandmothers in there. And the definition of family is continually evolving. I just think it's people who love you and care for you. That's your family.
That is so true. And now my next question is kind of related to what we've been talking about and discussing in the past questions. So what would you say is the most important lesson you'd like your readers to take away from On the Line?
This is a hard one, isn't it, Eric? I thought about this.
I'm letting you go first on that one.
That we're all on a path to becoming who we are, and that can be very hard. And that's applicable to Jordan. It's applicable to Junior. It's applicable to Chris, who's the father. And everyone's a work in progress. And maybe we can cut each other some slack for that.
Continual work in progress. The people I admire the most are the 85-year-olds who are taking university courses, who are learning another language, who are learning a game they haven't done, who we are continually evolves. And that's why when you talk about cutting people flack, I wish we cut people flack for something they said 17 years ago. It's who you are and how you've evolved, not where you were and who you were. We're evolving creatures. Nobody is static or psychic. We grow, we learn, we move, we develop, we evolve.
Although Aaron didn't do that, Eric. We purposely designed him as, he's kind of a jerk when the book starts and he's a jerk when it ends. And he was one that we had to kind of say, no, he's going to be a jerk. He's not going to redeem. He's not there yet.
In the sequel, he'll be better.
Yeah, I don't think he has all terrible qualities. It's just he doesn't move as quickly as the other characters.
That's the hard part sometimes. You're writing characters and you've got to make them do things you don't like, and you feel actually sad for having to do things to people. I just finished a draft where I had to kill 2 people who I liked. In the book, I didn't actually kill people. Let's be clear.
Well, I'm glad you didn't kill them in real life. And I think that the lessons that you shared, they're so true. We shouldn't dwell on the past. We always have to look forward to the future. We always have to kind of, because we're evolving. And I think that there's also a lot of truth in the character Aaron, like you said, because some people evolve quicker or slower than others. So I think that you really add even more realistic aspects to On the Line by having Aaron still being a jerk, because sometimes people can be jerks, and they might not stop being jerks for a long time. I know that from experience. I'm not a jerk, of course. And sometimes it takes a while to evolve. And I think that On the Line beautifully displays that through the storyline and through the characters' experiences.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And now we're getting into some lighter questions. Those have been very difficult questions to answer, I can tell, but they're also very meaningful answers and important answers as well. So
they
what
were
would you
thoughtful questions, E-Train.
Thank
So
you.
they required thoughtful responses.
Thank you. So what would you say the most treasured part of your heartfelt middle grade book is?
Eric, I know which scene is the one that I kind of keep going back to, and it's the garage scene. The idea of there's a bookstore assistant manager in Lethbridge, which is kind of the Bible Belt of Alberta. And she says the characters are beautifully broken, and that's kind of the space of brokenness to me. So I kept going back there, but that's the scene where you and I had spoken about what to write next. And then I promise, Eric, I tried so hard. I wrote the scene you talked about like 10 times, and it stunk. And then I sent you that scene, and with an apology, I was like, I'm sorry, we didn't talk about this. I'm throwing it in there. I think it fits.
But that's the evolution of things. The way this book works. For me, one of my favorite scenes is Jordan and Junior just out back on the swing set. Just the finally reconciling and their friendship coming back. That scene really resonated with me.
Yeah, that resonates with me as well. Friendship and also forgiveness. And I also think that what you said, Paul, what the librarian in Lethbridge said, how the characters are beautifully broken. I think that's so true. And sometimes we all might feel broken at times, but we need people by our sides to mend and to heal us. And I think that's what Jordan had. He had a support group. He had Junior, he had his family, and I think that's so important in novels.
When you put Kathy Kaser on your show, and you know that the book she and I wrote was called Broken Strings. I was working on another book at the same time, and the title was supposed to be Broken Crayons Still Color. And
Eric, that book is behind you, and it got a new title, I noticed. It's The King of Jam Sandwiches.
King of Jam Sandwiches. We couldn't go with the same broken strings and then broken crayons, but that line is very much a part of that book. That you can't have broken crayons. They're broken. That doesn't change the fact that they can still be used to create beautiful things. And even people that have had their own little faults, their breakages, the things that have hurt them, are all part of what makes them the people they are and make them capable of creating beautiful things. It's not just our strengths and our successes that define us. It's our weaknesses and our failures.
Brody was my character for that, Eric. he was the one that from the beginning I could see him really clearly, and I had to convince you of what I was seeing, but I wasn't telling you what I was seeing. It was just stuck in my head. I had to write it down.
Mm-hmm.
And you trusted me to do that. And I think we had this conversation, because if we haven't, it would be surprising to me. I said, there's so much messaging towards kids that it gets better, especially queer kids, that it will get better one day. But you don't see characters who actually survive and who actually will survive despite themselves.
Yeah.
And Brody was that character for me. So it was important for me to have him in there as an adult who's doing fairly well, who has a past where he was the vehicle of his own destruction.
It's so meaningful and so true. And I'm so glad that you said those words, that they're very fascinating and important answers. And now next is, since it's Pride Month, and I always love learning about more book recommendations, do you have any favorite middle grade LGBTQ plus stories you'd recommend reading?
Is this my field of expertise, Eric?
Okay,
because I'm going to go for it. For Canadians, Denis Jansen wrote The Year Shakespeare Ruined My Life. It's a great one which involves some Shakespeare, but you don't need to know Shakespeare. The kids are putting on a version of A Midsummer Night's Dream. She's just done a great job of that book, and it's her first one. Jenny Manzer wrote My Life is a Diamond, which is about a kid who has transitioned, is kind of trying to start a new life by playing baseball. So it has a sports theme with it. Tim, I don't know how to say his last name, Federell. He is one of the directors for the High School Musical show, I think. But he has Better Nate Than Ever. That's his book series, and they just did a movie of it. There's a graphic novel by Mike Curato called Blamer, really, really good. And this one's right on the cusp of, is it middle grade, is it YA? Because I think in 2007, when it was published, middle grade wasn't as popular. Susan Juby put out Another Kind of Cowboy, which is a really interesting book that deals with masculinity and sexuality. It's told in dual perspectives, but she wrote both of them. So those are books that I would recommend and I really like. I came prepared, Eric.
That's important.
That is important. Do you have any recommendations, Eric? Or I don't want to put you on the spot.
I think Paul's recommendations pretty well cover it. We have a couple of really good writers in this area, Tom Ryan and Robin Stevenson. If you're looking for their books, just look them up by name and you'll see the variety of books that they've written that have similar themes. Yeah.
They delve more into YA typically, but Robin kind of goes back and forth in all sorts of genres. She's really interesting in what she'll write. And Tom's doing great things right now with thriller, mystery. That's kind of where he's gone to.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for the recommendations. I'll certainly have to write them down. And I watched the Better Nate Than Ever movie. I really loved it. So I'm very excited to read the book version, the original version. And that leads me to my next question, which is one that I really like asking authors, editors, and people that I interview on my podcast. So, was there someone at any point in your life that truly inspired you to pursue a career in writing? A parent, teacher, or role model?
Yeah, my grade 5 teacher, Christina Gay, told me she thought I could be a writer when I grew up, which I thought was completely ridiculous since I was obviously going to be in the NBA. She is now 97 years of age. She's stayed in my life all this time. When I wrote a book called Fourth Dimension, she was a character in the book. The book is dedicated to her. And we did the book launch. It was 3 days before her 93rd birthday. I invited her to the book launch. It wasn't a book launch. I threw her a surprise 93rd birthday party.
Wow.
Those words that teachers say to kids, they do change lives.
They really do. And Paul?
No, there's not one singular person, but my family is really great. They never, if you say you want to be a writer, it sounds a little bit far-fetched. And I know that there's been other people's families who are like, that's what you're going to do? My family was like, you want to study books? Go and study books. You want to do art? Go and do art. Figure out what makes you happy and go towards that. So I've been very fortunate that way.
As a writer, you get that all the time. People saying, so do you still write books?
Children's books?
Say, are you still a doctor?
That is just it's always great to have family who support you, and also teachers, they are incredible. And I think that you could still go into the NBA, Eric. I think you've got writing sports books down. I think if you like start practicing a lot more, then I think you can get into the NBA. Coach, you played against Steph Curry.
I've written a couple of books with NBA player Jerome Williams,
Wow.
and we also played one-on-one together. If you think you're a good player, play against an NBA player, and you'll feel like you're not. You're not.
And Eric, you have the same bad knee as Chris, which I wrote the one-on-one scene first, which was the one basketball scene we know originated from me.
Mm-hmm.
And because you phoned me and you went, how did you know that my bad knee is the same as Chris's bad knee? I'm like, I didn't. It just happened to be a happy coincidence.
Yeah, my right knee is my bad knee, no question. I can tell a basketball player who's my age by the way they walk, because you can just tell an old basketball player, we hobble the same way.
Yeah. And those are great inspirations. I know that authors like you and also my family, like when you have some people that support you and are kind of that inspire you and keep you going, like I write book reviews for authors, and it's not just because like, oh, I don't want the attention. It's also because I just love the books, and being able to chat with the authors is really such an inspiring and motivating experience. And really, like, just it also inspires me to keep writing, because all the words that you share, they really, like, I really take them in, and I think it's just really great. All you're saying, it's so insightful in your answers.
Well, the reality
Eric,
is,
I'm a little salty, Eric, with other stuff. If someone says to me you can't do something or you're not going to be able to,
yeah,
I'll just turn around and be like, well, watch me go. I will do it just to spite you now. So if someone's telling you you can't do something, spite them.
people say positive things about you and what you're doing, you use that as energy. When people say negative things, use that as energy. Mm-hmm. For us as writers, especially writing for children and young adults, you're our audience. The awards that mean the most are those where young people decide that your book was a favorite. We're writing for you. Ideally, we shouldn't be writing for an audience of other authors. And our reviewers, I don't take reviews that serious. I don't actually care that much what a 53-year-old person thinks of one of my books. What I care about is what a 13-year-old thinks about it, what an 11-year-old thinks about it. That's what matters.
And the whole idea of a work in progress, Eric, is the same for your writing career. Is you get better the more you do it. You change the more you do it. So consider that every book is part of the whole opus of what your work in progress is.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got to say, your answers are so great. And my next question is not just for me to learn more, but also everybody listening. I know that there's so many aspiring authors out there who want to learn more. And also, both of you are such accomplished writers. I think we all want to know, what are some helpful tips or words of wisdom that you would share for the listeners and everybody who's just hoping to become an author like you?
Okay, Paul, let's hear your words of wisdom first.
Well, some of them I learned from you, Eric, and some of them are quite practical tips. Grab a calendar was one that I learned from you working together. Eric you can't have 12 Saturdays in a month. So grab a calendar, know your timelines. There's things like that are the very practical things that you go, oh yeah, that's how they do it. It's not magic. They actually pick up a calendar and go, these are when the Fridays are, these are when the Saturdays are, and things have to happen on weekends or weekdays. Like, there's stuff like that. Keep learning, and people learn in different ways. Some people learn from studying. I got to go to university to study books. Other people read a lot. Other people have natural instincts for things, and they're learning by going out and experiencing the world.
Mm-hmm. I've never taken a course on writing or writing workshop, but I have a degree in education, a degree in psychology, and I have a master's in social work. I'm a family therapist. So I think I have some understanding of how people talk and what goes on in their heads. And so those are the things that help me as a writer. But for anybody writing, I'm just a big believer. Work your story out. Try and figure out what it's going to be. Organize it. A simple thing like have a list of the characters in your book as you're introducing them, write them down, talk about who they are. That way you don't have three people with different names. You have a calendar of the events. This is day one. What happens here? This is the 14th day. So you can keep it all in line sequentially. I like continuity. I'm really a planner. There's no question. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
And one thing, Eric, I think don't be afraid to fail. The only failure is not to put the words on the page. If the words are on the page and they're not good, you can make them better. If they're not on the page, there's nothing to make better. Don't
be afraid of writing. As long as you write through your stuff, you know that the first draft isn't going to be perfect. It's going to have faults. Your second will be better. Your third will be better. Your eighth will be better. And just keep improving it, moving it in the right direction.
And when you edit, Eric, we were editing together. I think I looked at you and I'm like, I have no idea what this sentence is supposed to mean. And you're like, me neither. So we just cut it out. At the time, whoever wrote it, and I don't know which one of us it would have been, it made complete sense too.
Well, those are great words of wisdom. And I know that a lot of people listening are going to really thank you. And I'll have to look into keeping a calendar. I haven't really thought about that before. I've never received that advice. So I think that's really interesting. And I'm very thankful. And also, I think that it's like what you said last, I think it's a great reminder that like nobody's perfect. And especially your first draft, your first draft is not going to be perfect and you can't expect it to be perfect. You just got to keep working hard and eventually your hard work's going to pay off. Maybe you might not write over 130 books like Eric Walters, but at least you'll write one book.
If somebody said to you, oh, he must be a terrible basketball player. He missed over 6,000 shots. That'd be a guy named Michael Jordan. You know what I mean? Like, It's not what you miss, it's what you make. And what's the old saying? You miss every shot you don't take.
Dang, I was going to say that. You miss 100% of the shots you
isn't it?
Edit it, you edit it, and then you say it. So let's try it again.
You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Wayne Gretzky said that, and I think that's so true. The GOAT of hockey. If the GOAT of hockey says something like that, then you got to believe it.
Mm-hmm.
Derek, have you met Wayne Gretzky?
No, I haven't.
So he's not lucky enough to meet you. You mean like that's?
Yeah.
I live in Canada. I'm more of a basketball guy. I really am more of a basketball guy.
Mm-hmm. I'm more of a basketball guy as well, so we have that in common.
I'm more a figure skater guy. That's where I can go.
Well, figure skating is amazing too. I really love watching figure skating. So, yeah, I like all the sports that you enjoy.
But you know how much better figure skating would be if you could body check the other team while they're doing their routine?
You don't need to body check them. They fall all the time. Someone spins someone around, they face plant. It's great.
They toss their partner in the air and you get to grab them and take them away. That would be a fantastic.
That would be.
Full contact figure skating.
Yeah, I think that's just hockey though.
We just get rid of the sticks and puck.
Yeah. And now that leads me to my final question of the day. The question I ask all the authors, everybody that I talk to. If you could be or meet any literary character, fictional or real, who would it be and why?
Yossarian from Catch-22 would be high on my list. And also Winnie the Pooh. But if you think about it, doesn't Paul remind you a bit of Winnie the Pooh? Come on, be honest.
I just need a better red shirt, Eric,
yes,
and a pot of honey.
Can't you picture Paul with the honey pot stuck on his head?
The little black ring cloud, like how many balloons do I need to get up in the air? So, Eric, you kind of have met Winnie the Pooh then.
I have. I want some sugar cookies, Paul.
I make great sugar cookies.
With a taste of honey in them.
See, this is the problem with us not living so close together and not having seen each other. You have had so many cookies during this writing process.
Yeah. That would have made the writing process even more fun. Cookies and writing, boom! That's the ultimate combo.
Now I'm still, Paul. You going to answer this question, aren't you?
Yeah. I really want to meet anyone, but from Philip Pullman's The Golden Compass series. And you could pull out, and including Mrs. Coulter, who's just one of the best villains, especially when you get to the third book in the series. So anyone from any of those books. Also, if I get to go into that world, that would be extra good.
Well, those are all great answers. And I'm glad that I sort of met Winnie the Pooh today on this Zoom. And I haven't read the Golden Compass series, but a lot of my guests have recommended it, so I'll have to look into it. I'm not sure if it's middle grade or YA, but so
It's one of those weird ones where when I bought it, it was in the adult fantasy section, and then a year later it was in the teen section, and then a year later it was in the children's section, and I was like, I don't know where it falls. So if you like it, and that's it.
Okay.
So next year is a board book. It's going to be a board book next year.
Yeah, that's going to be a mighty condensation, Eric. It's like we're going to take several hundred pages and just squish it down into like 50 words.
Or you could like make the font super duper tiny and write every single word in the picture books, like and make the pages super wide so that you could just write every single thing into just a few pages.
They did that with some of the classics, like Jane Eyre. They turned into a board book, and I was just like, "What baby wants to read this?" I don't think they do.
And those are very fun answers. And unfortunately, that's the last question of the day. It's so much fun learning about the writing process and everything about On the Line and Everything Books. So if you haven't checked out On the Line, everybody, you need to. Eric Walters and Paul Coccia, sorry. So they're amazing. I'm so glad I had the opportunity to talk with them today because honestly, I loved On the Line from the start, but learning more about the characters through the authors in an interview, that just makes On the Line that much more better. And I want to go back and read it again, just look for those little details that I might have missed and try and see, is this a Paul chapter or is this an Eric chapter? And that's just, I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to chat with you. And everybody, if you want to follow Paul and Eric on social media, you can follow Paul on both Twitter and Instagram, and Eric Walters as well. They also have great websites where I learned a lot of the information about them for this interview, and you should definitely check them out. And they also have great books that I honestly really love. And although I haven't read I haven't read 130 of Eric Walters' books, that's my goal. That's really my goal. And that's all. As always, stay safe and happy reading. I'll see you in the next one. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.